My dear friends, look at you. Yes, you. You give and then you give some more. You show up even when your soul feels like it's running on empty. You pour kindness into every space you enter, hoping someone somewhere will notice the silent ache behind your smile. But have you noticed lately, kindness feels heavy? It used to be a light in you. Now it feels like a burden you can't put down. You smile at people who wound you. You open your heart wide and trembling to those who see it not as sacred, but as an opportunity. And they take again and again, and you let them. Because you were taught that this is what good people do. Good people endure, good people stay, good people give even when it hurts. But that's not kindness. That's self-abandonment dressed up like virtue. Maybe no one told you this before, so let me say it now. It's not holy to be hollowed out. It's not righteous to let yourself rot in the name of being agreeable. Stop being kind to everyone, not because you should be cold, but because you need to be wise. Because not everyone who asks for your light deserves to stand in it. And here's the truth that stings, doesn't it? Sometimes the devil doesn't come with a pitchfork. He doesn't shout or scream. He whispers with a smile. He shows up not to destroy you in a single blow, but to drain you. Slow, quiet, invisible. He wears the face of someone in need. And you answer every knock at your door thinking you're being godly, but you're bleeding out emotionally, spiritually, piece by piece. Look around. Look at the weight you're carrying. Is it even yours? Or have you been holding everyone else's burdens, hoping it would earn you love? You were never meant to carry all of this. So maybe it's time not to harden your heart, but to guard it. You are allowed to protect the kindness within you, because if the enemy can't break you, he'll drain you, and he'll call it love. Do you remember when it started? That first time someone said, "Wow, you're such a good kid. You're so mature for your age. You're the responsible one." You beamed. Your little heart swelled. You thought, "This is who I have to be loved." So you became it. The good one, the quiet one, the helper, the fixer, the peacemaker, the one who kept it all together while everyone else fell apart. And oh, how they praised you for it. But no one saw the cost, did they? No one saw how you swallowed your feelings so others wouldn't choke on theirs. No one noticed how you made yourself small so others could feel big. No one asked if you were tired of always being fine. Because they didn't want your honesty, they wanted your obedience. And so you wore that label like armor, the good one. It made you feel safe, important, needed, but also invisible. You became the emotional garbage bin for your family. The one friends came to when they were broken but never stayed for when you were. And when you tried to speak up, you were told, "Don't be selfish. Don't make a scene. Just let it go. It's not a big deal." So you stopped speaking. You smiled instead. You carried the pain in silence, thinking that was strength. But here's the thing. They didn't love you. They loved the version of you that served their comfort. And you confused that with love. You began to believe your worth was in your usefulness, that your value depended on how easy you were to love, how little space you took up, how few needs you had. But love isn't measured by how much you can endure. It's measured by how freely you can be without fear, without conditions, without the need to prove. And if being the good one is killing your spirit, then maybe it's time to ask, who are you when you stop trying to be what everyone else needs? You've lived this way for so long now, haven't you? Always giving, always showing up, always stretching yourself thinner and thinner and thinner. At first it felt good, right even. You told yourself it was just part of life, a necessary thing. You were helping, you were being the good person. But over time, that goodness became a weight, a burden. The exhaustion didn't come just from physical tasks, but from the constant strain of being needed. There came a moment when you looked up and realized you were giving without reserve, but there was no one there to fill you back up. You were pouring yourself out, but no one was refilling your cup. And so it began slowly at first, then more obviously. You started to feel empty, and still you gave. You smiled through the hurt, through the fatigue, through the quiet ache in your chest that no one seemed to notice. You told yourself, this is just who I am. This is my purpose. This is what I'm called to do. But deep down, something started to unravel. The people who took from you, the ones who took your time, your energy, your heart, they weren't grateful. They were never grateful. They didn't notice that you were cracking beneath the weight of their demands. They took, and you kept forgiving. You kept saying, it's okay, no problem when they hurt you. You kept opening your heart even when it was being trampled. You kept giving your all even when it wasn't being appreciated. Have you ever been there? When you forgive too fast, too easily because you're terrified of the fallout? When you ignore your own need for rest because you fear being called selfish? When you've said yes for the 100th time, but each yes is costing you a piece of yourself? You weren't showing mercy. You were surrendering your soul one silent yes at a time. Do you realize that? Each time you said yes when you should have said no, you sacrificed a bit of your peace, a bit of your heart, a bit of your strength, and it went unnoticed. You were still smiling, still being kind, still doing the right thing, but somewhere in the depths of your soul you began to break. But you didn't let anyone see it. You didn't dare let anyone know. Because if you did, what would they think? What would they say about you if they saw the cracks, the vulnerability, the truth that the good one was finally crumbling? So you hid it. You put on that mask of kindness and you wore it well. But inside, the pressure was building. You were suffocating. Does this sound familiar? Maybe you're there right now pretending you're okay when you're anything but. Pretending that all the giving doesn't hurt, even though it's leaving you feeling hollow. Pretending that it's worth it when deep inside your soul is crying out for relief. But here's the truth. You weren't made to be a martyr. You weren't called to break yourself for the sake of others. You were made to live in abundance, to be a vessel of peace, to walk in the freedom that Christ died to give you. And the moment you realize this truth is the moment you begin to heal. It's time to stop pretending. It's time to stop giving so much of yourself that you've forgotten who you are. Late at night, when the house is quiet and the world feels like it's still spinning while you're stuck in a never-ending cycle of giving, something begins to shift inside you. You can't keep pretending anymore. Your thoughts race in the silence. You can't sleep. And as much as you try to distract yourself, the question keeps echoing in your mind, Lord, why do I feel so used? You've been here before, haven't you? You've opened your Bible, desperate for clarity. You've searched for answers, but it all feels like it's slipping through your fingers. You pray, God, show me. What do I do? And in your soul's deepest cry, something begins to stir. In that quiet place, you find it. The words that were there all along, but you never saw them because you were so busy trying to meet everyone else's needs. Even Jesus didn't say yes to everyone. Think about that for a moment. Jesus, the Son of God, the one who came to heal, to save, to restore, even he knew the importance of boundaries. There were crowds who followed him, desperate for a word of healing, desperate for his touch. But there were moments when he simply walked away. He didn't stay. He didn't give. He didn't let the pull of the world consume him. Remember the time he overturned tables in the temple? Jesus, the very embodiment of grace and love, was angry because the sacred was being defiled. He wasn't weak. He wasn't meek in the way the world misunderstood meekness. He stood firm. He protected what was sacred. And there it is. That moment of clarity. Why are you so afraid to say no? You've been confusing God's love with human approval. You've been so desperate to be liked, to be the good one, that you've abandoned the very boundaries that protect your soul. That's not the gospel. That's guilt. True love has boundaries. True kindness has strength. You've convinced yourself that being spiritually nice means being endlessly available, bending until you break. But the truth is, God didn't create you to be consumed by the demands of others. He didn't create you to give away every ounce of yourself until you're empty. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to protect your peace. You are allowed to say no. Do you hear that? You are allowed to say no. The enemy loves when you believe that being available to everyone means you're being loving. He loves when you take on more than you can handle, when you give until you have nothing left. Because in that emptiness, you are no longer a vessel of peace. You are a vessel of exhaustion, guilt, and bitterness. But that's not what God wants for you. He doesn't want you to be drained. He wants you to be full of His love, full of His peace, full of His strength. When you learn to say no, you're not rejecting people. You're protecting your heart so that you can truly love. Can you imagine a life where you don't have to say yes to everything? Where you don't have to please everyone? Where you don't have to carry burdens that were never meant to be yours? God isn't calling you to be a doormat. He's calling you to be a warrior, a protector of your soul, a vessel that carries His love and truth with strength and wisdom. And here's the thing. When you finally understand that your worth is not in your endless giving, but in your ability to stand firm in who God made you to be, that's when true peace comes. That's when joy is restored. That's when kindness becomes powerful, because it's no longer a reflection of your fear or guilt, but a reflection of God's love and truth in your life. You don't have to give everything away to prove your love. You don't have to sacrifice your peace to show kindness. True love has boundaries. True kindness has strength. And true peace is found in knowing when to say no. There's a moment, a pivotal moment, when everything changes. It's the moment when your heart feels like it might beat right out of your chest, when your mind races and your body goes tense. And in that moment, you realize that saying no might be the most powerful thing you've done for yourself in a long time. You've spent so much of your life saying yes, yes to everyone else, yes to every request, every favor, every task. You've been the go-to person, the one people always count on. And for a while, it felt good. You were needed, you were wanted, you were valued. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. The yes didn't feel as satisfying anymore. The smiles you got for being the helpful one didn't warm your heart like they used to. The exhaustion that came with always being available, it began to chip away at you. And then came the moment, that one request that was the straw that broke the camel's back. It wasn't malicious. It wasn't even a big ask in the grand scheme of things. But in that moment, when you were standing face to face with yet another demand on your time and energy, something inside you clicked. You could feel the weight of it like a stone sinking deep in your chest. You could feel the words forming in your throat. And there it was. The truth that had been waiting inside of you for so long. The truth that you had been too afraid to acknowledge. It was time to say no. No to the pressure to be everything to everyone. No to the expectation that you should always be the one who sacrifices. No to the feeling that your worth is tied to how much you give, how much you do. In that instant, something shifted. You realized that saying no wasn't a betrayal of love. It wasn't a rejection of the people you cared about. It wasn't a sign of weakness. It was, in fact, an act of self-preservation, an act of love for yourself. You breathed in deeply and looked the person in the eye. And you said it, number. No with love, no with confidence, no with peace. It wasn't easy. In fact, it was one of the hardest things you've ever done. But as the words left your mouth, you felt a sense of liberation. The weight that had been sitting on your shoulders for so long began to lift. And for the first time in a long time, you felt a wave of relief wash over you. There was no guilt, no shame. Just clarity. In that moment, you understood that saying no was not about cutting people off or being selfish. It was about protecting your boundaries. It was about knowing that you can't pour from an empty cup. It was about realizing that you are worthy of rest, of peace, of time for yourself. You didn't have to explain yourself. You didn't have to offer excuses. You didn't have to feel bad for saying no. You simply said it, and in that moment, you reclaimed your power. And you know what? Nothing bad happened. In fact, something beautiful happened. The world didn't collapse. The people didn't leave. The relationship didn't fall apart. Instead, you discovered that the people who truly cared about you respected your boundaries. They admired your courage to take care of yourself. And those who didn't respect your no, well, you learned that it's okay for some relationships to evolve or even fade away. You're allowed to say no, not out of anger or resentment, but out of love. Love for yourself. Love for your peace. Love for your boundaries. Love for your life. And the more you practice this, the easier it gets. The more you say no, the more you realize that your worth is not tied to how much you give. Your worth is inherent, given to you by God. You are enough just as you are. You don't have to prove anything. The turning point wasn't just in the act of saying no. It was in the realization that you are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to prioritize your needs. You are allowed to live your life with boundaries and still be full of love. And now you stand taller. You speak with more confidence. You walk with peace, knowing that your boundaries are sacred. And most importantly, you're free. Free from the burden of endless giving, free from the fear of disappointing others, free to be exactly who you are without apology. You're standing at a crossroads, but this time it feels different. The weight you've carried for so long is no longer tied to your shoulders. It's beginning to slip away. For the first time, your heart isn't weighed down by the demands of others. You might have thought you could never live without being constantly needed. For so long, you've been the person people could rely on, the one who always said yes, even when your heart screamed no. You'd convinced yourself that being kind meant being available endlessly, but something inside you has shifted. The relentless exhaustion, the constant feeling of being used, it's all beginning to fade. Now, you're asking the right question. Who do you actually want me to serve, Lord? This question, simple as it may sound, is profound, and it's the beginning of a journey toward understanding what true kindness is. When you started to pull back, when you said no to the wrong things, it was as if you were opening your heart for the first time. You stopped saying yes because you had to and began saying yes because God was guiding you. Slowly, you began to notice the changes around you. People who had been close to you yet drained your energy started to fade into the background. It wasn't that you didn't care about them anymore. It was that you had learned to discern between those who needed your kindness and those who only took it. You realized that not everyone who came to you needed you. Not everyone who asked for your time deserved it. And the surprising part? The ones who truly respected you began to draw closer. Those who honored your boundaries, who cherished the heart you were giving them, started to show up in more meaningful ways. For the first time in years, you felt peace. Not because everyone was pleased with you, but because you knew that you were in alignment with God's will. You weren't serving out of guilt anymore. You weren't trying to earn approval. You weren't drained by the weight of expectations. You were serving out of joy, out of divine purpose. And with that joy came the strength to set the boundaries that had once felt so foreign. Because you knew that kindness, true kindness, was rooted in something much stronger than mere obligation. It was rooted in truth, in clarity, in understanding what was meant for you and what was meant to stay at arm's length. Your yes now carried power, not because you could do everything, but because you had learned to say no, to protect your spirit, to protect your peace. You knew that God had not created you to be a perpetual giver, worn thin by the demands of the world. He had created you to be a vessel of His grace to pour out when and where He had ordained. And when you started serving out of that clarity, your kindness became sharper, clearer, purer. No longer a tool for your own validation, but an instrument of divine guidance. You weren't just trying to please people anymore. You were pleasing the one who mattered most. You had surrendered to His plan, and in doing so, your heart had found rest. You began to see the truth in this. Kindness, when rooted in truth, is a force unlike anything the world has ever seen. It doesn't bend, it doesn't break, it remains steady, steadfast. When you act out of truth, when you walk in God's wisdom, kindness becomes a foundation. A gift that can't be drained by others' demands, but one that grows stronger the more you nurture it. And you, my friend, are beginning to understand that. You've crossed a threshold now. The old you, the one who was always trying to please everyone, the one who gave and gave until your soul was drained, that person is no longer the one you see when you look in the mirror. You are different, transformed. The world will try to convince you that kindness means bending to every demand, offering your time and energy to anyone who asks. But now you see the truth. Kindness is not about giving until you break. It's about discerning the moments God is calling you to serve and knowing when to say no, knowing when to walk away. It wasn't easy at first. At times you might have felt guilt or even fear. What if they get upset? What if they think I'm selfish? But then you reminded yourself, love is not weakness. And mercy isn't mindless. Jesus didn't die so you could be a doormat. He died so you could walk in strength. He modeled the perfect example of kindness, not a kindness that is passive, not a kindness that sacrifices everything without thought, but a strong, intentional kindness rooted in truth. Think about him for a moment. Jesus knew when to serve and he knew when to step back. He was never afraid to walk away from a crowd. He rebuked the proud. He overturned tables in the temple, and he didn't hesitate to say no when it was necessary. But his no wasn't an act of rejection. It was an act of love. It was an act of divine wisdom. And that, my friend, is the kind of kindness you are stepping into. The kind that stands firm in truth. The kind that protects your peace like the precious gift it is. You no longer apologize for saying no. That's not weakness, that's strength. You no longer smile at disrespect because kindness doesn't need to tolerate disrespect. You don't make excuses for boundaries anymore. You stand tall in them. You serve with wisdom, with the guidance of the Holy Spirit, knowing exactly when to give and when to hold back. This is the kind of love that doesn't just give to everyone indiscriminately. It gives with purpose, with intention, and with divine guidance. You walk away when needed, and that's okay. You protect your spirit because you know how precious it is, and as you do, your kindness is infused with a power that comes straight from God. It's not empty. It's not drained. It's full. It's overflowing. You've learned what it means to walk in godly strength. The world will tell you that to be kind is to be weak, but you know the truth now. To be kind the way Christ was kind is to be strong, rooted in truth and anchored in love. You are no longer bound by the need for approval. You are no longer defined by how many people you please. You are defined by your relationship with God and His call on your life. And with that comes peace. True kindness, the kind that flows from the heart of God, doesn't leave you empty. It fills you. It empowers you. It is strength. It is peace. It is grace. It is truth. And now you're walking in it. I want to speak to someone watching right now. Maybe it's you. Maybe you've been carrying this weight for so long that you've forgotten what it feels like to be light. You've spent your life being kind, trying to keep the peace, trying to help, trying to fix, trying to love, and somewhere along the way you started to lose yourself. You became a vessel for everyone else's needs. You gave your time, your energy, your peace, your joy to people who took from you without hesitation. You did it because it seemed like the right thing to do. You believed that this was what God wanted. You thought it was kindness, but in reality you were allowing yourself to be drained, to be consumed until there was nothing left but emptiness. I'm here to tell you something powerful. It's okay to stop. It's okay to walk away from what's draining you. It's okay to protect your spirit, to guard your peace, to say no. You are not betraying God's love when you set boundaries. You are honoring the peace He gave you. You are not being unkind when you refuse to pour from an empty cup. You are taking care of the very vessel He has entrusted to you. God's love is not soft, it's holy. And holy love sets boundaries. Holy love knows when to step back, when to say no, and when to protect the soul. When you guard your peace, you are honoring the God who gave it to you. It's not selfish, it's not wrong, it's not unchristian, it's wise, it's necessary. And it's an act of deep respect for the God who created you, who loves you, and who wants you to thrive, not burn out. You were never called to break yourself to fix others. You were never called to sacrifice your spirit to make others feel better. You were called to walk in truth, in love, and in strength. And that is the kindness that reflects Christ. There is someone out there right now who feels like they've reached the breaking point. Maybe it's you. You've been running on empty for far too long. You've been trying to please everyone, trying to keep the peace, trying to make sure everyone else is happy. And now you feel like you're at the end of your rope. But listen to me. You are allowed to stop. You are allowed to protect your peace. You are allowed to say no. There is no shame in walking away from what's draining you. There is no guilt in setting boundaries. There is no weakness in saying, I can't do this anymore. Because when you say no to what's harming you, you're saying yes to the peace God has for you. It's time to walk in the strength and kindness that Christ modeled. It's time to stop being kind to everyone and start being kind to the ones God is calling you to serve. It's time to say no to what's draining you and yes to what's empowering you. It's time to stop breaking yourself for others and start walking in the love, grace, and strength God has for you. This is your moment, this is your shift, this is your time to stand in your truth and live out the love that is rooted in wisdom, strength, and divine peace. You are allowed to stop being kind to everyone, and you're allowed to start being kind to yourself in the way that God calls you to. And that, my friend, is where true peace lives. You were never called to break yourself to fix others. You were called to walk in truth, in love, and in strength. That is the kindness that reflects Christ.